The year is 2005, the month February. The world is rocking out to 50 Cent's Candy Shop. George W. Bush is just starting his second term after defeating every terrorist in hand-to-hand combat. But more importantly, it's my birthday. And like many 10-year-old boys on their birthdays, I was having a sleepover with my best friends. My dad gave us his laptop so we could play flash games on Newgrounds and addicting games like The Impossible Quiz and Kiss Britney Spears by Bobby. That night, we also went to miniclip.com, a website that, among its sea of half-baked games, was a small box promoting something called Runescape. So we clicked the link, created an account, and started playing. Little did I know that the next 2 decades of my life would be defined in large part by this little browser-based MMORPG. And despite years of amazing games coming out that pushed the boundaries of what we thought was possible graphically or through storytelling, I keep coming back to this game that, in the year of our Lord 2024, looks like this. And I'm not alone. This game is more popular than it's ever been. New content is coming out at a faster pace than it ever has. And all I can think to myself as I partake in it is, why? Seriously, why is a game that itself is a re-release of a game that is 17 years old not only surviving, but thriving? If you just take a surface look at this game, you're probably just gonna be more confused unless you've played it before. And if you have played it before, you might still be really confused. Like, what do people see in this? This is a question that's been plaguing my mind and the mind of my lovely Patreon supporters. Thank you so much, by the way, guys. You're seriously so awesome. And if you want to support, you can do so for as little as $1 a month at the link in the description. Whoa, with old school RuneScape, obviously the graphics are dated. It doesn't take a PhD in psychology to see that. Is that the right PhD? I don't know. But even when it comes to character progression, even the littlest things will take hours, and some of the longer grinds can take days, and with a bit of bad luck, even months of just doing the same content over and over and over again. But the player count keeps going up. Look how high up I am. There's so much room below me because the player count is so high, and I'm one of those players. What's wrong with me? I think it only gets crazier when you look at the rest of the MMORPG industry, which are supposed to be old school RuneScape's competitors. Most of these games are fast-paced, action-packed games that bring at least something from mainstream AAA titles to the table. Final Fantasy XIV has one of the best stories of any MMORPG, and it's a major reason players keep coming back to it. World of Warcraft has the smoothest combat system and a challenging but rewarding endgame that other MMOs have tried to emulate for decades. New World exists, I think, but old school RuneScape sits in its own little niche, using the same basic systems it released with back in 2001. You point, click, and wait. There's no other abilities or hotbars. You aren't doing thousands of damage with crazy finishing moves. You just chop a tree and wait, or you fish for sharks and wait, or you cook a monster and wait. I mean, you would have to be at least a little crazy to make a game like this today. But that's exactly what makes it so special. There's nothing like it today. Old school RuneScape has, since its inception originally in 2001, basically done the opposite of what someone would think an MMO should do. Wait, hold on. Are you even listening to what I'm saying right now? Eyes up here, buddy. I see, you're distracted by my awesome shirt. That makes sense because it's from today's sponsor, Into the AM. Into the AM is a clothing brand that makes tons of things like long sleeve t-shirts and graphic tees. Really cool graphic tees. Not just this one, but also this one. Whoa, wow, this is a nice one. But there's also this guy, which is black, and it just looks really cool, to be honest. But anyway, I've personally been wearing Into the AM since before they even sponsored me. That's how much I actually like them. And I mean, just look at all the options. You're gonna be hard pressed to not find something you like here. This is just so cool. I think my favorite part about Into the AM is actually that there's something for everyone. Sometimes I like wearing these more minimalistic shirts that just have the little logo on the side here. But every so often it's nice to bust out a sick graphic tee with all these images and colors going on. If you go to the link in the description right now, you'll get 10% off these premium tees, the ones I've been wearing throughout the video. So again, click the link in the description, get 10% off, and all right, can we start focusing up here and less down here for a little bit, okay? When you launch the game, you're placed in a very hand-holdy tutorial that teaches some of the very basic mechanics of the game. You learn how to run, and mine, and cook food, and fight until you're eventually teleported to the main city of Lumbridge, and that's it. Go forth and create your own adventure or something, I don't know. In other games, you'd usually be given a quest to go speak to some other NPC who will immediately give you another quest, or you just spawn next to a quest giver and go from there. But in this game, you're not given any of that. Sure, not far from you are several easy quests that'll get you started, but they don't lead you anywhere new or force you to train skills up. In every sense, you are left to your own devices to discover the world around you in your own way. And let's be clear, this should suck. In any MMORPG, if you aren't sufficiently motivated by your next immediate goal or working towards some longer-term milestone, you're gonna get bored and quit. And when I asked people on Twitter who never played RuneScape back in the day for their thoughts on old school RuneScape, I saw a lot of this exact sentiment. Like Twinleaf, who said he had no idea where to go or what to do, so he just gave up. Or Sawman UK, who said, hold on, let me try and do a good British accent here.
I tried to play it last year and again this year and didn't get past the hour mark. Hope that helps.
But I think old school RuneScape can get away with this for one major reason. It's really damn simple. Don't get me wrong, RuneScape's an extremely deep game, but on the surface, it's about as simple as it looks. You wanna get some woodcutting levels? Chop literally like any tree. Just go ahead, click, and just wait. And the first few quests you'll come across, like Cook's Assistant, are really, really simple. Everything you need to complete them is within a 30-second walk of the starting area, so it doesn't get any easier than this. But again, that's the strength of the game. Old School RuneScape presents you and its new players with an entire sandbox in a massive world, and doesn't give you any other direction than just play? But since it's so simple to figure out how to do the most basic actions in the game, that actually works to its benefit. Once you take those first few steps out into the world, you're off, and there's nothing in your way. Eventually the game does get more complicated, like the quests you'll find will have certain prerequisites, like maybe you need a certain thieving level before you can start it, or even you have to have completed enough quests beforehand to start this quest. But by that point, you've already learned what you need to figure out how to make that progress. And if you haven't, then you've already probably learned where to look to find out. Fights with monsters will evolve from simple click and wait battles to encounters where you need to have an inventory full of food, better gear, and maybe even higher stats to unlock things like protection prayers. The game never tells you to get 43 prayers so you can block all incoming melee damage, or to get 30 defense so you can wear adamant armor. It doesn't have to. The early game is essentially its own tutorial because you'll more than likely be able to figure out everything you need to for yourself while staying completely immersed. Hell, the entire game is basically one long tutorial disguised as an MMORPG. You don't even realize it as it's happening, but you're learning how this game and how this world works. By the time you've reached the mid-game, when you've progressed a lot of your individual skills and started taking on more difficult quests, you'll be introduced to the next way Old School RuneScape encourages you to lose yourself in the game. You'll get sidetracked. You might get sidetracked by something simple, like maybe you want to kill lizardmen for your Slayer task, but those very lizardmen drop a clue scroll. A clue scroll is basically a treasure map that takes you through a series of riddles until you find the treasure. The answers to the riddle could be simple, like you have to talk to an NPC back in Lumbridge where you started, or maybe you have to dig along the bank of a river. But some of these clues will have certain requirements to be completed, like this one that requires you to perform an emote in the Fishing Guild. And that's when you realize that to get in the Fishing Guild, you need 68 fishing, and you never trained your fishing because fishing is for nerds, and you're not a nerd, you're a normal person who watches video essays about a point-and-click MMORPG. But if you want to complete this clue scroll, it's time to get catching. Maybe you decide it's time to look up how to train fishing efficiently. I mean, after all, you want this done as quickly as possible to get back to your Slayer task. And maybe you find a guide that recommends wearing the Angler set, which is gear that boosts your fishing XP by a marginal amount. That's bad advice, but you know, maybe it's out there. So eventually you find yourself in the fishing trawler minigame so that you can start working on the Angler set, so that you can start working on getting 68 fishing, so that you can get into the Fishing Guild so you can continue doing this clue scroll. Do you even remember why you're doing this clue scroll? But after all that sidetracking, you finally get your casket, which is basically a reward filled with goodies. It's a lot like a present if you think about it. A birthday present. Kind of like how my birthday is on February 22nd, if you want to mark it on your calendar or something. I don't know. This is an extremely tame example of sidetracking I described, by the way. It can and does get much deeper than this. Anyone who has played RuneScape for any amount of time will attest to it. But this sidetracking all over the world and through multiple goals is just part of how the game keeps you hooked. You'll be working towards one of your long-term goals, but along the way, dozens of short-term goals will pop up naturally that will keep you going, and most importantly, show you parts of the world you maybe hadn't been to before. Because the world is fucking huge. Like, seriously, look at all of this. It's insane. And the worst part is that as I'm filming this, it's about to get bigger. So there you go. Even if you take away the fact that the whole time you're progressing your character numerically, you're also discovering a world and everything it has to offer as you get stronger. Like Wrinkle Lover says, this all adds up to make progression feel meaningful. And most importantly, it doesn't feel forced, because it's not. You're just following the flow of the game. This isn't only true for new players. Veteran players are constantly discovering new things about this game we've been playing for 2 decades for some of us. Anyone who's watched the Swampletics series knows how many insane discoveries Settled makes throughout the course of that journey. Yeah, it comes as a result of some crazy self-restrictions he put on himself, but still, it just shows how deep this all is, and it's just so awesome that we can still be learning something new about a game that came out years and years and years ago. Like I've said multiple times already, this game is so simple, and that's why it gets away with being able to give you all of this right from the start and just let you run through it so you can learn as you go. It's a beautiful hands-off approach to getting players in the game that really is a relic of a past era, something I don't think we see very much at all anymore. If you look at games like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV, you'll almost always have a quest telling you exactly where to go, or even these markers on the ground that will tell you where to walk to get where you need to go. They will hold your hand the whole way through. Even RuneScape 3, the modern version of this ancient game, does this. Once you finish the tutorial, there are markers everywhere that will teach you how to train all sorts of skills, how to do combat, and more. The devs are so worried about you getting lost that there's an obscene amount of guardrails around the world. Maybe that's the right move for those games. I mean, they are much more complicated right out the gate than old school RuneScape is. That's obvious. But for old school RuneScape, it just makes sense to be thrown into the world. It just feels right. Like I said before, there's nothing in your way of just starting your journey, whatever that journey may end up being. But one thing that journey will definitely be is really, 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 really long. If you didn't get bored in the first hour of playing, which, I mean, a lot of people do, then you'll inevitably encounter what old school RuneScape is truly known for. Grinds. If you don't know what grinds are, they're basically these things that skateboarders do where they like hop up on a rail and then they like skate down it, and it's worth a lot of points in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 if you do some combos off of it. So that's a little skateboard humor for you, just to lighten the mood. Speaking of skateboards, have you subscribed yet? Anyway, grinding is core to old school RuneScape's identity. It's the process of getting from where you are now to whatever goal you've set out for. That could be something like going from 50 to 70 fire making, or getting 99 smithing, the maximum level, because you're a bit of a freak. It can even be the process of getting a drop from a monster, like the coveted Tanzanite Fang from Zulrah, which has a 1 in 112 chance of dropping on any given kill. These grinds could range from taking a few hours to multiple weeks, and for the largest goals in the game, like maxing all of your skills, it can take years. But RuneScape players, me included, love it. And to be fair, what's not to love about getting something like 99 agility? You get to run on this sick-ass rooftop in a town called Ardouche. And when you finish a lap on it, you get all of this sweet XP, and then you get to do it again, and 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 again. By the way, you unlock this course at level 90. Do you want to know how many times you have to do a lap on it to get to 99? 9,695 laps. That's how many times you have to do it to reach the maximum level. Does that sound crazy? It should, but for some people, even after they hit the maximum level, they keep going because they want to reach the maximum experience, 200 million. That means they have to do this an additional 235,000 times. All I'm saying is we shouldn't be surprised that the guy who's gotten 200 million agility 6 times is mentally ill. This is an extreme example, but it is truly an aspect of the game that most players would never want to see changed. For them, it's core to the game. Like somewhat recently, one of the most important items, the Dragon Warhammer, had its drop rate changed from 1 in 5,000 to 1 in 3,000. This is obviously a big change, making it almost twice as likely to drop, but also keeps it pretty rare. This change, though, was extremely controversial. It was so controversial that when I tweeted in support of it, I got called the R slur repeatedly. To be fair, that was on Twitter, but the sentiment of a lot of players is still that these long grinds should be left the way they are. And that might sound weird to people who are outside the game. I mean, the grindiness of RuneScape is often cited as a big turnoff to the game. But honestly, I think I get it. There's the obvious fact that a long grind means a big payoff. When you invest a lot of time into something and you finally achieve that goal, whether it's a drop or just an amount of XP, you've earned it, and feeling like you earned something feels good. I have gone many times over the drop rate several times in this game, and the excitement about finally seeing a drop that I've waited so long for is unmatched. But I think there's something else to these grinds too. When I look at what newer players told me they liked about the game, it lined up with what I and a lot of other veterans like about it, whether we realize it or not. RuneScape is a comfort game. You can pop open a Netflix show or a YouTube series on one monitor while you cut trees or kill a boss or do some quests in RuneScape. Maybe you could watch some anime like Oraimo with episode 1 called My Little Sister Can't Be My Love, or episode 3 called My Little Sister Can't Be This Cute, or episode 6, My Childhood Friend Can't Be This Cute. Okay, I guess that one's a pretty normal title. Either way, most of the grinds in this game can be really relaxing and pretty passive, allowing you to get the joy of progressing while not having to pour all of your focus into the game. Sure, other MMORPGs have moments like this. Fishing in World of Warcraft, for example, is a nice bit of downtime, but it's much more central to old school RuneScape. It almost paradoxically makes this high investment game really casual friendly. But as you continue working on your character in these simple, pretty passive ways, you'll unlock the ability to do much more active content that does require your full attention and can really force you to put your skills to the test. It might be getting your first fire cape, a rite of passage for any new RuneScape player, or down the road it might be learning how to 6-0 range bandos on your Iron Man, which requires insane timing and skill, which is why I'm so good at— oops. I'm dead. Let's just be clear that I did get a kill right after I filmed this clip. There's the kill, so any haters? I don't want to hear it. This game provides you the ability to balance how you want to play it. You can take it as easy as you want, or you can go full focus and squeeze out every bit of efficiency there is, not just with boss content, but even with skilling content. You play how you want because this game is a comfort game, and like I said at the beginning, there's no other game like it. Every MMORPG has its grinds and its warts, but none of them embrace those aspects like old school RuneScape does. No other game would keep the graphics it had in 2007 for the next decade of its existence while things constantly get updated around it. No other community would make sure the sound that nail beasts make stays exactly the same, even though it's literally ear-piercing. Jesus, God. No other game would do those things. But that's the last thing that makes this game so special. Its identity, and the ridiculous commitment the developers and community have to it. Old School RuneScape was released on February 22nd, 2013, otherwise known as my birthday. That's weird, is that the third time I've mentioned my birthday in this video? Crazy, it almost feels like you should write it down or something just so you don't forget. The game was spun up from a backup Jagex had lying around of RuneScape back in August 2007, and after a poll that received honestly fewer votes than I remember, Jagex agreed to release old school RuneScape servers. But what's interesting is why people wanted to go back to the way things were in 2007. Sure, nostalgia had a part to play in it, that's been talked about enough for one lifetime. But the much more compelling reason, in my opinion, for these old school servers was due to what was going on in RuneScape, which at the time was the only version of RuneScape there was. In the years since 2007, RuneScape received tons of new updates, like 2 new skills, summoning and dungeoneering, a minigame called Mobilizing Armies that was so bad it was eventually removed, and a slew of new content like distractions and diversions, penguin hunting, and more that was meant to be completed on a daily and weekly basis. Not all of these additions were strictly bad, but they also didn't necessarily feel like RuneScape to a large portion of the player base. And that's because Jagex was doing what they could to modernize the game. These modernization efforts accumulated in what was one of the most infamous updates in MMO history, the Evolution of Combat. The Evolution of Combat was a total revamp of the extremely simple RuneScape combat system. It changed how monsters worked, added abilities and a hotbar to characters, and for many players, marked the end of their personal journeys on RuneScape. That includes me. From what I've heard, the Evolution of Combat in a vacuum isn't bad, especially after it was refined into what it is today. It makes combat more active and engaging, even for more low-level encounters. But it undoubtedly changed RuneScape at such a fundamental level that it was no longer RuneScape. It played like a worse version of the dozens of other MMORPGs on the market. So yes, the calls by the community for old school RuneScape servers was them asking to go back in part due to nostalgia, but it was also a desire to get back a game that really was one of a kind. Over a decade later, the combat system in old school RuneScape is basically untouched. The graphics are the same as they were back in 2007. Even new content is intentionally designed to look and feel like old school RuneScape, something that sounds stupid but makes a lot of sense when you see how seamlessly it all fits together. Old school RuneScape gets weekly updates, and it has for basically its entire existence with just a few exceptions. These updates range from bug fixes to new quests to new bosses and maybe entirely new regions. And when you go try out these new pieces of content, you'll be able to tell that it's more modern than what came before it, or at least a higher quality. But you'll be hard-pressed to find anything that doesn't feel like it fits in. Something that doesn't feel old school. This game and its developers know what its identity is, and sure, there's been changes over the course of the decade plus it's been out, that's normal, but it hasn't ever strayed from being what it is. It's a grindy but simple game that you can invest literally tens of thousands of hours into and never be done with. So why is old school RuneScape so popular? Because it's one of a kind, and it knows that. And I'm gonna go to sleep now. Good night.
Hey, you're a patron. Thank you so much for your support. Hey, you're a patron. I like you very much, cause hey, you're a patron. Patreon is where you're at. You went to the URL in the description and you gave me your money, and that's pretty neat. Hey, you're a patron. Thank you so much for your support. Hey, you're a patron. I like you very much, cause hey, you're a patron. Patreon is where you're at. You went to the URL in the description and you gave me your money, and that's pretty neat.
This video was brought to you by my Shadow Cabal, but they're secret, so pretend you didn't see this part unless your name is a hobo with a spork.